Good morning, viewers. Today I am present before you with the topic Eliot's Classicism. Before I begin the podcast, it is advisable that you keep a notebook and a pen so that you can jot down the important points relating to this particular topic. It is further advisable to use earplugs for listening to the podcast. So here I begin. Writing in the modern age, T.S. Eliot was a classical writer. In 1928, he made his famous declaration that he was a classicist in literature, a royalist in politics, and an Anglo-Catholic in religion. Referring to the classicism of Eliot, Maxwell observes in the poetry of T.S. Eliot, I quote, "A characteristic of classicism is its acceptance of an already existing poetic background, whose function is to provide the poem's incidental symbolism. The Rape of the Lock is conceived with the framework of the classical epic, using its accepted symbols. Pope saw no reason for the creation of symbols peculiar to himself, as Shelley did in Prometheus Unbound, symbols whose full meaning could be appreciated only by their creator, although their necessary vagueness could produce a pleasing suggestion of profound significance and final order. Of the same nature is Eliot's acceptance of traditional literature as his poetic world. This can be seen most clearly in The Waste Land, where a blending of traditional European and Eastern thought is the necessary background to his interpretation of the contemporary problem." Unquote. As a classicist, Eliot opposed the Georgian poets. The Georgian poets who followed the Romantic tradition had become increasingly detached from the actual experiences of life and were using perpetually a worn-out poetical idiom. They were not able to break away from the stale words, stale verse forms, stale imagery of the enfeebled Romantic tradition. Moreover, none of them showed signs of coming to terms with the immense upheaval in thinking and in way of life which was affecting Europe at that time. They were and remained the silver writers of an older golden age. The new gold was being smelted abroad, and it was once again brought in English poetry by Eliot and Pound. Eliot was a traditionalist who challenged the progressive view of history that originality in poetry is an aspect of individual freedom in life. Eliot's historical view of English literature is a point for point reversal for the progressive one. This was quite against the ideology of the Georgians. Eliot sharply reacted against Romantic subjectivism. He stood against the Romantic theory, which regarded poetry as the expression of the poet's personality. The Romantics believed in inspiration and intuition. They believed in the poet's following his own inner voice. But inspiration is fitful, a matter of chance and accident. An unrestrained liberty in the hands of lesser men is likely to degenerate into chaos and license. The evil consequences of such romantic fallacies were well illustrated by contemporary English poetry, which was degenerate and which indulged in trivialities. Reacting sharply against this state of affairs, Eliot emphasized that the classical school achieved an elegance and a dignity absent from the popular and pretentious verse of the Romantic poets. He pointed out that the difference between the two schools is that between the complete and the fragmentary, the adult and the immature, the orderly and the chaotic. This shows that Eliot appreciated the completeness and formal perfection of classical poetry, and the classics could achieve disorder, and balance only because they followed some discipline, some authority outside themselves. The classical poets could achieve this completeness, maturity, order, and balance only because they submitted to some discipline and followed some authority outside themselves. Eliot's classicism was nurtured by an impact of such classical writers as T.E. Hume, Ezra Pound, Paul Elman Moore, and Irving Babbitt. Under their influence, Eliot also did not believe in the essential goodness of man. In this, he thought in the vein of Hume, who rejected the view of man's essential goodness and asserted that for really great creative work, a belief in the original sin was indispensable. In his essay on Baudelaire, Eliot quotes with approval the words of Hume. I quote, "In the light of those absolute values, man himself is judged to be essentially limited and imperfect. He is endowed with original sin, while occasionally he can accomplish acts which partake of perfection, he can never himself be perfect." Unquote. Hume therefore thought that poetry must recognize its limitations and that it could in no way be a substitute for religion, as Arnold and Pater tried to prove. Hume, like Eliot, found the classical view to be identical with the normal religious attitude and both, therefore, wanted to return to orthodox doctrine. Hume distinguishes between romanticism and classicism in the following manner. I quote, "Put shortly, these are the two views then. One, that man is intrinsically good, spoiled by circumstance, and the other, that he is intrinsically limited, but disciplined by order and tradition to something fairly decent. To the one party, man's nature is like a well, to the other, like a bucket. The view which regards man as a well, a reservoir full of possibilities, I call the romantic. The one which regards him as a very finite and fixed creature, I call the classical." Eliot's classicism is evident in his literary theories and concepts. His tradition and individual talent exposes his classical approach. His classicism is seen in his idea of tradition, his impersonality theory of poetry, and his concept of objective correlative. So, this was a small note on Eliot's classicism. I hope it proves to be of help to each one of you. Please mention your questions and observations in the comment section below. Please do like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to click on the bell icon for latest update. Thank you for your valuable time. Here's wishing you a great day ahead.